20 minutes for questions, comments, suggestions.
I have one.
Huh?
I have a question.
Okay, find out. Ask your question.
Okay. Okay, so my question goes to you, Shirin, and Thomas.
Yes, me.
No, you're Shirin. Who's Shirin?
That's
My name is
Shirin.
Shirin.
And your name?
Ayebe.
Karim. All right. So, first of all, I just want to thank you for, making our time to come here. I was in touch with Miriam and the authors of the papers, the 3 papers are submitted here for presentation. And I am drawn so much to Mr. Bujuredi, who is an agent of interreligious dialogue and interreligious freedom. And the suffering he has endured in Iran and his persistence in peace and dialogue and education, writing all that from his room in prison. It reminds me of many and great people who suffered during the Nazi attack at a concentration camp. One of them, Joseph Kempnick, who was a priest and has drawn many Schuster family around the world. I know he still faces a lot of challenge in Iran, and I just want to ask you to tell him that we, from the International Center for Ethno-Religious Mediation, are really inspired by the work he's doing, and we really want to include some of these papers in our publication once they're peer-reviewed. But my question, just to make it short, is how do politicians, the current government in Iran, respond to the teachings? One on the one you talked about, the ultra-religious theory of wish actualization doctrine, which is really highly provocative in Iran right now. How does the current government respond to that?
For answer this question, I should say that again, that he took up his clergy dress clothes because of being against of the government, because the government in Iran are Islamic government, and they are the leader is a clergy man, and he named himself as a clergy man who is the leader of all Muslims in the world. But Mr. Bujuredi, during these 30 years, tried to find a way to make people close together, to find a way to make peace, and find a way to show people what's actual humanity. And because the government in Iran are looking for power and having the rule, so they want one way. They say that correct way is my way. It's one way that we give to the people, and if someone comes and says something else and show people something different and gather people as a follower, it's the enemy of government, because they're scared of people, they're scared of someone else that says something different, and they actually has some extreme religion in Iran. If you say something against the government, you have to get to the jail. So that's why they actually took him, and several times, not just one time. He was suffering during whole his life. When he was 20, it started, government took him and take him to jail or some courts religious code and torture him because of his idea. He actually was re-elected and sent letters to UN and talk about people, talk about human rights in Iran, and it wasn't, something that governments want.
Let me add something. The other things that I can add to my friends about Mr. Burjardi, he was sentenced to execution on 2014, even he was in prison. Because 5 years ago, even he was in the cell, he just started teaching his a new translation or a new version of Islam via telephone, via phone, from inside of prison to his followers. And the followers get together all these teachings, and after that they publish in 2014, the government add a new sentences to him for execution. And because of a lot of international human rights activists, and we just highlighted his case again. And after 40 days in cell for execution, after that they stop execute him, and then they return back to his cell. And he just has a new version of Islam, and he is the opposite of a super leader in Iran. And this is the big challenge of him. And there is no, he's a unique, and there is no example like Mr. Burjardi in Iran that stand the opposite of the government in a loud voice, even he is in a critical situation.
Yes. What is booming?
I would like to direct the question to perhaps everybody here, just in case we don't get a direct person to answer it. Maybe Islam will lead us and take it to the final stage. Basing on the violent conflicts around the world, where at least someone belongs to a given Abrahamic religion, and where the nations have God in their mottos. In the US we say, in God we trust. In our country we say, for God and my country. But when politicians see things going astray, that's when they refer the matters to religion, and it becomes everyone's responsibility. So basing on that, and the escalation, the speed at which violence is escalating, yet by the time we are living here, we may have others trying to see how best they will finish their communities. Does religion have a desk in the United Nations where a number of issues concerning religious conflicts and violence can be referred to, especially with the Abrahamic faith leaders, such that it can help not to leave all matters in the hands of the politicians, but having religion sharing part of the problems? That is my concern. Thank you.
Good question, good concern. We're not going to answer that question here. You know why? Tomorrow you get an opportunity to what? To go to the UN. And we are begging you, ask them that question when you get there. Any other questions?
I guess I have sort of two questions. One is for both ladies, both Persian ladies on your presentation. So I was recently listening to the autobiography of Condoleezza Rice, and she was talking kind of the inside view from the U.S. government. And it doesn't, I don't think that things have changed that much, but it sounds like our official government relations, like U.S. government and the Iranian government, are non-existent or not good, to say the least. So I'm wondering if there's anything that, if we're Americans or if we're not Americans, whatever country we come from, if there's anything we can do to try to support the work of Mr. Speed, obviously that makes it complicated that our government is not having official relations, but if there's anything practical, I guess, that we could do to support, and also on the future of conflict resolution for you, sir. Just wondering if you could take maybe, I know you named like 10 different promising mechanisms that you see, so I'm wondering if you could take one of them and maybe kind of explain kind of an example of how it could be applied practically, or how you either an example of how it's already being applied well, or if you don't see one of those, maybe how you think it could be applied well. I guess I'm looking for maybe some specifics, some practical guidance on that, if possible.
Yeah, thank you.
I can just answer your first question. I'm not sure about your second one. But for supporting Mr. Buttigieg, actually during his sentence, and he was 11 years in jail, and he was a famous prisoner from Middle East. He had many supporters from all around the world. If you saw that clip that we saw before, Amnesty International support him, and there were many petitions for him that people signed up from all over the world, and we are thankful for that. And also you can go in our website and see, participate or be one of our volunteers, and you're welcome for everyone. And if you want something, if you need something more, if you need more article, or you want to know more about, Iranian culture, or what is going on over there, because it might be confusing for American people, because American people live in free, area, free country. You can say anything that you want. You can say your idea about your government so easily, but it's not such a thing in Iran. So it's good to know about other people, Iranian people. They're not poor, but they're not free. And it's good to know them. It's good to hear them and to know what they want. And this leader, this teacher, has something to tell to other people, and he's trying to make peace. He's trying to make friendship between governments, even between Iranian and American or other people all around the world. And I think you can join us. It would be good. For the second question, I'm not sure that.
Yeah, it's supposed to be for
Okay. And could you please just, in a similar way, just
refresh.
Refresh my mind.
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
Come again.
Okay.
Please.
Sure. Just essentially, I'm trying to think, take one of you mentioned 10 or 11 different ways to proceed. So I'm just trying to think practically and specifically if one of them were applied, what it might look like. So, for example, you were talking about alternate dispute resolution. I guess or it doesn't have to be that one, any of them. Just if you could give maybe a little bit more detailed example or case of one of them that you think either you've seen it work well or how you imagine it could work specifically. Just a little more specifics on it, I guess.
Thank you. The most relevant one would be peace education. We need to overhaul the curriculum of what our children or the young generation is being taught, and they teach them things that are going to help to bring peace. And one of the ways is to make sure that they integrate. When you look at the curriculums that are being taught, mostly in Africa, I will give an example of Uganda and Tanzania, the whole of East Africa that I've traveled in and I've taught in, is mostly oriented or focused on job creation or on getting to the job, and it doesn't, there is nothing like humanity in it, there is nothing like culture in it, there is nothing, in fact when you look at it, it is more like it teaches selfishness. So the peace education that I'm talking about should be to overhaul the whole the curriculum to make sure it involves what used to be the better Africa. Because if you read history, you realize that even Europeans had to come from here to go to Africa to learn something. And they brought it here and they used it well and they're okay. For us, instead, we have failed to use what we had. In those years, when you read history, you realize that people used to live in harmony. Your neighbor was your neighbor. You would not fight your neighbor. Diplomacy was diplomacy, and if, by doing diplomacy, I'll give you an example. If you, for example, families fought, you had to carry some gifts to the other family that you fought with as a sign of respect, as a sign of, all that has gone away. So we need to have peace education where we integrate our history, not going back to the history, because that will be another disaster altogether, but we integrate our history with the current trend so that we get humanity in the world. Thank you.
Can you give us any examples in African culture of where elders were brought into a community setting to reintegrate those things from the past in traditions that have dissolved, that were helpful in making sure that people held accountability to each other? Or are there some aspects of the ancient indigenous side of the African culture that could be brought in the efforts that you're talking about in peace education?
Yeah, when we come to, I can give you an example of Uganda. When you realize that in Uganda we have a president, but when he came, later he realized that to make people united and to make people one, he had to bring back the kingdoms. So we have the kingdoms in Uganda. And one of the massacres I was showing you was recently when he tried to abolish those kingdoms, saying that they were making people so united and the like, people had to fight. They decided to fight the government. So when you realize that in Uganda, like in central Uganda, my brother has been there. He knows Kampala, the capital city. We have a tribe or a group called the Baganda. These ones have their king. They believe in him, and whatever they are studying, the queen mother has gone ahead to integrate, to put up classes where girls are taught maybe how to dress, girls are taught how to cook, girls are taught how to maybe to treat their husbands, girls, and it has in a way resolved the conflicts, the marital conflicts, where you marry a woman, a lady, and she doesn't even know how to cook, and the following day you chase her, you send her back home. It has brought maybe how to work, how to be patient, all those things have been there because they integrated back the cultural settings with the modern trend. So what I'm saying is something that is practical there. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, suggestions?
One last question for
please.
Dr. Ole.
Yeah, please.
You talked here, your last presentation, which is really amazing, education against dehumanization. So my question to you, because when you were presenting, you talked about the Jewish people as the chosen, people. And that is an example of dehumanization, something like that. So has your model, which is the education against dehumanization, been applied or implemented in Israel? That's just question. Has your model of education been applied or implemented in Israel? Has it been tested?
But you don't suspect that I believe that we are the chosen people. I
No.
hope that you don't believe me, because I don't. I am human exactly like you is everybody else. So what's the question?
So the question is the model for your education against dehumanization.
Yes.
Has it been applied or tested in the schools in Israel?
It's a very painful question for me. No, I'm not a very popular guy in Israel. And I told you, the future of my program depends on you. I'm not associated with university. I am poor. I may say I'm not rich. I'm rich. You remember I tried to get the reduction of the registration. I live on pension. So no.
Yeah, he did say it yesterday that his
I'm
model has
desperately
not
looking for places where it can be applied. Israel went towards conservatism, towards nationalism, regulating the education system is centralized. In America, it's much more diffused. You have states, different states and different countries, and there is a degree of independence, of autonomy for the school district. And even single teacher, without getting any permission, can do very important part, because he doesn't have to convince anyone to say that they are wrong, or just bring to awareness the very fact that we are all human.
And I must say that Gillian is here in 2014. In 2014, when you sent your paper, you were going to attend our conference in 2014, but you couldn't come, and Gillian, who is right over here, read your paper. And that was the first time we came in contact with your theory of dehumanization and education against dehumanization. Gillian, you remember we were saying one day we're going to meet Dr. Oleg and see him in person. Thank you for coming, honestly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, one more question? Yeah. Comments? Go ahead.
Bashir, my colleague, you said that we have to realize that we have to be rid of culture.
Come again?
You said something about the forget about culture.
I said
Culture and religion.
culture and religion are two aspects of man, and you can't remove them from man, and therefore you can't remove conflict from man, because they are the causes of conflict. But no, when I'm talking of man,
It's still in the old English. We have to. And that's one thing we also have to work with our wonderful thinker from Israel. We no longer use the word what? Blind areas. What do we call them? Visually challenged areas, right? But we appreciate the blind areas, because imagine if we have to change everything to be politically correct, and let's try to sing Three Blind Mice. It's not going to work, right? It's easy to say what? Three blind mice, three blind mice. See how they work. Now try substituting that with what? Visually challenged mice. Three visually challenged mice. Oh, no. So we use blind areas, but at some point somebody's going to beat us to say, we don't want blind, we want what? Visually challenged areas. So just so that you know, that is going to come up as you make your presentation, especially in the US of way. Okay.
so when I talk of man, it's both.
All English.
Yeah.
Now we say human. We say human.
And I think that peace education should start with this in the class.
In the class. Yeah.
Then in the recommendation you said diplomacy. But nowadays, one thing which works really efficiently is what is called cultural diplomacy. And in all mediations, in all, I think some people are better placed than me, you have cultural diplomacy experts. Sit around negotiation tables and achieve, manage to come to
But we have not achieved that, because the diplomacy experts are there, well and good, but these people that they are trying to bring together, each one has got a separate mind. I will give you a case in point is we come to Kenya. We have had Kenyatta and Odinga sitting on the round table to agree. But at the end, when they leave, this one leaves and says something different, this one leaves and says something different. And the diplomats tell us we have tried to unite them. So the diplomacy I'm talking about still comes back to the peace education. It still comes back to the overhauling of the curriculum. The diplomacy I'm talking about is where the chief those days would call and say, they told me you slept with somebody's wife. Therefore, as a fine, you're going to pay 10 gods. Please do that, and you shake hands, and the diplomacy works. You get it? That's the diplomacy. I'm saying of peace education where that involves overhauling or getting back or branding the history into our current model of how we do things.
I just want to add, if you don't mind, one thing is that peace education should aim, in my opinion, should aim at unveiling, not faces, but voices. Unveiling women's voices, especially in countries where women believe that being Muslim, for example, they're not supposed to raise their voices or ask questions in Islam. My experience as a teacher has amply, my experience and that of other colleagues, men and women, have amply demonstrated this fact. Which means that when women walk into the classroom, they take everything for granted. And peace education should help them to go beyond the taking for granted. Beyond. And you have very often, peace begins with the relationship between the teacher, and the student, man or a woman. And very often, those in the classroom see the teacher as a priest or someone who sermonizes on a mountain. The big gap between students and the teacher. And I think this pedagogy is part and parcel of peace education. Yeah. Thank you.
We must consider one of the weakest part of peace and conflict resolution studies has been peace education. We still stuck way back when it started, let's just bring peace into the curriculum, talk about peace and stuff. But we don't even write books that convey speech. When you take a book, even in English or mathematics, if you use so-and-so percentage of nitrogen, how much nuclear bomb are you going to make? These are the things you read even in the books, and we have not stepped up to the plate, as we say, to really even contribute to curricula. And you still have Jack and Jill went up the hill. Where are the peace people? Why can't we write books that Jack and Jill don't have to go up the hill, somebody breaking his head or come tumbling down? But these are the things we say we want to promote peace education, but our kids are still reading a lot of violence. I've been working on a book on peace mathematics. The thing is simple. How do we remove all this violent language in mathematical equations? There are a lot of good things, good examples we can put in mathematics books. There's good work now being done in writing that some ladies have been working on. They had a book that came a few years ago I think that's really what peace education, if it really has to catalyze, that's how we want to move. Okay? As I said, usually you leave the best for last, and this is what has happened. It has more energy, more conversation, and a very beautiful presentation. Please stand, you presenters, and take your due acknowledgement, please. Prof, yes, you guys stand.